Hello, thank you for adding me.
All right.
Um, this discussion is very interesting, but what hurts the most is that when you really look at it, we almost share the same ancestor, right? When they talk, we are people from the East, right? All these tribes, the Venda, the Purdy, if we look at even the Zimbabwean tribes, the Xhosa, the what, we are all we all fall under the Karanga branch, right? Which is people from the East. We share one ancestor, right? But look at us, we're fighting each other. If we were to look at Africa as a whole, we are talking about Black people. Here we are fighting for a job, a waitress job, be it a doctorate, be it's an engineering job, be it a what. Why don't we ask ourselves, why are we fighting for jobs and not ownership of companies? Why? Right? Say all the foreigners leave South Africa. What benefit really is the Black person going to have within South Africa? They leave, still you'll be here, you will still be having a job. You work at that job at 60, you're writing a letter, oh, I'm retiring, to pursue personal interests. What personal interest will you pursue? You're no longer streetwise. One, you don't have the land. Two, even if you were to be given the land, you don't have the know-how. What education have you been given by your statesmen? Right? After independence, what did they do? You are still being fed that education that the white colonial people introduced. Education which does not empower you. You find a grown engineer who has learned how to create a water system. He cannot do that. Instead, after having a doctorate, done all that, he's going to look for a job. But he cannot create a system that his people can benefit from. Why? It's that pathetic, but why? That is the real situation. Why? Because that is the formal education that the Black person has been given. So it's high time, instead of focusing on the other Black person, because that is what the our colonial masters designed and continue to perpetuate, so that you focus on things that do not matter. Instead of focusing on, let's change the education curriculum, it has to empower the Black child. It has to focus on all the gifts. We are not all going to be strong academics. We are not going to be good, or not going to be good at medicine. If it's a carpenter, let them be a good one, right? If their parents can't find fees for them, at least even when they reach grade 7 or whatever metric, they can be able to stand on their own and be independent and not work until they're 60 and live and get a package which their great-grandchildren cannot benefit from. Right? You are saying, oh, this foreigner should go so that I can get a job. What is in it for you? What does this job give you? What is it going to give your grandchildren? We need to think. We need to think as Black people, because this is pathetic. And this does not make a good example of us out there in the world. We're making a laughing stock of ourselves. Why not say, okay, we have to be taught agriculture so that when there comes a time where we want to have the land, we know what to do with the land, right? Let's take a look at the Zimbabwe case which we're talking about. Robert Mugabe, he led the Zimbabwean people, he took back the land. But what did you South Africans do? Instead of joining in, that was the perfect moment for all the other Southern African countries and all the other African countries to join hands and push and take back the land and help each other on what to do, right? Or at least, okay, think and say, okay, let's say we push them at once, maybe we may have a crisis, but okay, let us teach our own people how to farm, how to work the land, right? How to be independent. If you're an engineer, you need to know how to be independent after graduating. Not that you live there so that you can go and be a white man's slave in a white man's company. It's pathetic. You have a
Thank you,
doctorate,
Princess.
but with that, okay, I'm done. It's okay.
No. We appreciate your
Other
contribution. Thank
people
you so
can
much.
talk.
It's okay. We really appreciate your contribution. So, is there anyone who wants to respond to Princess?
Princess, let me tell you something. Not everybody is
Yes.
gonna be an
Hello?
entrepreneur. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Princess?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, what I want to tell
Yes,
you
I can
is
hear
that
you.
not everybody is gonna be an entrepreneur under this sun. What you can say, at least it will sound a little bit better, is that at least some African people can create or either start their businesses, which I can say 10% here in South Africa, that's what is currently happening. I don't know whether you are not aware of that. And if you instill that the South Africans, why should they fight to get their jobs and become slaves? Isn't it the very same Zimbabweans that the South Africans are complaining about coming here to be the very same slaves? Sometimes you Pan Africanism, you've got a problem of how you put things. First of all, the whites were chased away. Mugabe didn't chase away the whites. Mugabe had an idea, and then the people, the Zimbabweans, ran with Mugabe's idea. Mugabe never issued or made an announcement that go and attack the white farmers and chase them away. So it's the Zimbabweans that did that. And after that, they can't even farm. They can't even use those farms. So here in South Africa, most of the farmers, the boss who owns farmers, they've got a black person next to their farms because that's what we call a transferal of the skill. We've got a lot of, especially women, we are holding that sky high by being involved in agriculture. So we need to check our facts before because these are the things that mislead us as Africans because you've got a minor knowledge or either a misinformation, and instead of you doing the research and check out thoroughly it's factually, you will decide rather to go and run with it. So you are spreading propaganda in that way. The very same slaves, people that promote slavery that we are mentioning here in South Africa, that's the very same people that Zimbabweans are coming, majority of them. Not all of them are working in our houses. They work in the White Houses. Thank you.
Can I respond, my sister? I need to respond. Can I respond?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Sister Pacey. You made a good, valid point. But I want to add. Actually, I'm lazy. I'm lazy to respond directly to Princess because I think this debate, this topic is about what the knowledge she has. So I don't even know where to start. But I will actually go back to the sister who was here before Princess because she really put out good points, especially referencing to the history of capitalism and how the whole thing gets played. I mean, she referenced a good example with the Black Americans, for example. Back in the days, even before Jim Crow law, which will be like apartheid in South Africa, they were working when they were working in the, what do they call it? In the farms, I will say farms for lack of words. They were actually seen as hard workers. I mean, even the way they were selecting slaves during Atlantic slave trade, they were selecting the best of the best. Those who were fit physically to do the job. They were embraced because they were slaves. They were getting free labor. That's what happened in South Africa as well. We were once before end of apartheid, even before apartheid, when the English ran South Africa. We were all working in South Africa. No foreigners were allowed here. They literally built an electrical fence to not allow any African to enter in South Africa. It was after the so-called democracy, after apartheid, that they started to allow to push Mandela and his government to sign those laws, those called international community laws, that we are we are democratic nation, we must be friendly to other countries, then everybody must come here because they want cheap labor. That's basically how capitalism works. So they have to replace us because they can no longer exploit us. That's how the system works. After you give these people the so-called democracy, after you took so much resources from them, you give them the imaginary democracy and replace them with the new slaves, which in this regard will be the Zimbabweans, the Malawians, the thugs. The Nigerians are like the new Colombians who export all the crime, the kind of crime that, I mean, you look at the drugs, the brothels, the human trafficking. We're talking of this one Africa, but you've got a Nigerian guy in South Africa doing human trafficking our young girls. What kind of brotherhood is there? That's why most of us, we don't really care about it. We know down at the core that it's survival of the fittest. It ain't got nothing to do with skin color. It ain't got nothing to do with being African. I'm very first. Then you break it down. I'm from Limpopo. I represent my province. You break it down from there. I represent South Africa. You take it from there. I represent Africa. I represent black people. I represent the black race. But I need charity begins at home. I moved from the provincial level. We are at the national level. This thing of acting like South Africa was once an open field where everybody was just running around and happy. It was never like that. Africa, in fact, was more disorganized before when we were in tribal authorities, when we lived as tribes. I mean, Africa is home to oldest tribes in the world and largest tribes in the world. We have got thousands of tribes. And we lived like that. It was after colonization, which I'm not embracing it, but colonization unified Africa than before, because now we had seen the nations rise. I mean, people will come here and say as if Limpopo, for example, was one with Botswana and Zimbabwe. That's literally not true. Remember, the colonizers didn't divide South Africa out of just their mind. They divided Africa. Look, they studied our tribes. They knew how we Africa was structured. They basically followed those rivers, the chain, how we were actually divided in our tribes. Then they just erected nations. Now you end up with Botswana, Zimbabwe, Ghana, Nigeria, Gambia, Liberia, all these things. We stand as nations. I believe we can unify as regions at some point, but it's not going to happen in less than 100 years. We are not ready for that level. Back to that sister who mentioned that education in South Africa. But actually, the South African education is obviously not the best at the global stage, but we are the most educated group in Africa today. The evidence is there. Even our universities are the most performing universities in Africa. Black South Africans currently, we can literally do it. We don't need there's certain skills we will need, but it's actually not as much as how people make it. We are capable of actually doing the most ourselves. We only need those kind of like rare skills in places where like ESCOM at the top there, we really need scarce skills there. I don't think in medicine we actually need much, as it's exaggerated. And in fact, most doctors in South Africa are South Africans, and many of them are Black South Africans. Most teachers in South Africa are in fact South Africans. Most lecturers in South Africa are in fact South Africans. Most engineers in South Africa are in fact South Africans. I mean, South African institutions produce the best engineers in Africa, the best, I'm not sure about medical institutions, but in terms of engineering and doing research, we are actually the best. You look at University of Cape Town, it's #1 in Africa. You look at University of Wits, it's #2 in Africa. In top 10 best universities in Africa, 7 of them are from South Africa. So we need to start having honest conversation. And also to ratify my sister when she mentioned something about unemployment in South Africa. Unemployment in South Africa, I'm not going to try to downplay it, but it's also it's political, because South Africa doesn't use as the standards of African standards. We basically use developed country standards. So what we basically might call unemployment could be employment in many African countries. Like, for example, if you go on Google now, check, they will say South Africa has a poverty rate of 55.5%. But if you read the whole article, it says upper bound poverty. What is upper bound poverty? Now, we need to kind of like explain these things to many of our African brothers for them to understand. Poverty can be broken into levels, just like how we can break middle class. There's upper middle, there's upper class, there's upper middle class, there's middle class, there's lower middle class, you know. So people need to understand that certain things are just political. Just like when they say white people own 70%, 72% of the land in South Africa. You read the whole article, it says 72% of active farms. And then people will run with these things and say, oh, black South Africans own 4% of the land. That's insane. Even through history of colonization, there was never a point in our history where white people owned large land in South Africa. What they own, what basically makes white people have this upper hand above all races, they own the global system. They literally own the global system. They determine which country trade which country. That's why Russia is fighting with the West. There's always the fight is about trade, and that's why the land is not a primary. It shouldn't be what we prioritize, because the land at this modern age is not really important. What is important is to build systems. We need to look at taking down the Western system first. I mean, people are saying we should take the land back. We take the land back at what system? What is going to govern? How are we going to depend? We're going to trade at what? Because now we depend on them. They tell us how to trade with who. Zimbabweans, they took back their land. We saw the results. So in my idea is that the land is no longer a priority. You must establish the systems first. Establish the countries that you can trade with now. If we replace the Western system, we must have countries that are ready now to trade with us and replace what the Western was giving us. That's how we must be thinking now. And that's what Africa needs.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my contribution is that we all know that there are elections coming 2023 in Zimne.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm glad that we are now starting to discuss these issues, because we really need solutions now. I think there should be preparations for those elections so that they cannot be rigged. We know that Zimbabweans have a good relationship with Malema. I think Malema needs to play his part now. Maybe they can try and meet him, Malema and Kopanang Africa. I think Zimbabweans should meet those guys. Those guys should really play their role now. I think Malema can raise the issue of Zimbabwe in parliament, because he's a parliamentarian. Yeah, I think the parliament of South Africa must start discussing the issue of Zimbabwe. And then Malema must also use his platform in Pan-African Parliament to discuss the issue of Zimbabwe. They must push the African Union to start looking at Zimbabwe. They must prepare to make sure that during the elections, there must be people who will go and observe there to make sure that the elections are not rigged.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, let me, Brian, are you still there? I think Brian, okay. This one.
Can I answer to Themba, Ziki?
Okay.
Yes, Ziki, I'm there.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I'm listening, ma'am.
Themba, you know the problem that I'm having, Mina, as an individual, is that you guys put your hopes on wrong people. Why am I saying so? You must remember the very same Malema that you say you guys must converse with him because he is friends with ZANU-PF. Malema is an individual person who is thinking of himself, his children, his family. You cannot tell a person who is running or who has got shares on Zimplant, who has got shares in your mining in your country, that he is going to be against the people who have offered him those businesses, to be against them. It's impossible. You guys need to think. That's why we say go home, so that when you are at home, you can see how can you be strategically. Here you guys need to be innovative and to be more clever than the old cronies that are there in the parliament. Because the Mangwangwa that is sitting in the parliament, you guys put him there because you thought he's better than Mugabe, forgetting that he was also working with Mugabe. So now you're going to make a huge problem. And for your information, Malema's Pan-Africanism doesn't work for us here in South Africa. because we know him better than you guys. Because the very same people that he will fight with you guys and say, yo, don't trust the whites, our land. Malema goes and have the tea with them after what? While you guys have got the mentality that, yeah, Malema doesn't buy this scam of the white people. His party is sponsored by the very same people that he is telling you guys that he's fighting against them. He's the same, like, who's this Mkulu that went back to Zimbabwe, Ziki? Maponga. Maponga has been making noise about the land. Last month, he was having, seriously, Temba, he was having a seminar right in Zimbabwe. I don't know whether you guys saw it. And he was telling those people who attended his conference that no, the land is no longer important. That's why we call them flip-floppers. We've got the reason behind that. But because you guys are so colonized by them or either captured by them, you don't understand us. You think, oh, we hate these people. We don't hate them. I'm telling you, I just wanted to tell you about that you guys, you need to be strategic as the young generation. Leave these old cronies aside.
Yeah. Can I come in a little bit, ma'am?
Okay.
Yeah. Firstly, ma, I am a South African. I'm not a Zimbabwean. The reason why I'm talking about Malema, because I also understand exactly what you are talking about, but it seems as if our brothers and sisters in Zimbabwe are misled. They don't see through Malema. So what I'm trying to do here, I want them to see for themselves what kind of a person is Malema, because he claims to have a good relationship with them. So he must come and help them so that we can see that he's genuine with his relationship with Zimbabweans.
But Temba, have you heard Malema commenting about anything about the situation of South Africa and Zimbabwe? Swaziland was having a problem. EFF was there even a few days ago. They were there at the bottom, but they don't entertain the Zimbabwe issue because they know that they've got a lot to lose. So people must just open their mind.
So, but we need to put an end to this Malema propaganda. We need to put an end. He must come up clean.
Molale?
He must come up clean.
Yebo, I'm here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I think we are not diagnosing the issues correctly. That's why this debate will still be had even next year and the year after that. Now, here's the reality of South Africa. South Africa, there are two South Africas. There's the South Africa for white people. This is a legacy of apartheid, right? There's a South Africa that works for white people. And it has a few black people in it who have a nice job or who are in parliament or who have shares at the mine. Then there's a South Africa for black people. So when we said that South Africa is the most unequal society in the world, what did we mean by that? That's the first question we must answer. And then the other thing is that South Africa currently has the worst unemployment rate amongst countries that are not in a war, right? But we know that unemployment and poverty in South Africa is also racialized. So there are no white women who are domestic workers in South Africa. It's only black and colored women for some reason. So those are some of the things we are dealing with. And then we had a government, you guys must remember this, that actually doesn't mind if black people are not educated. Because remember, the black people from Zimbabwe claim that they are educated. So when black people in South Africa had a fees must fall, the same media now said that those black people were hooligans and rebels or whatever you want to call them. So they use all sorts of adjectives to describe them, right? So when black South Africans actually want to get educated so that they must now run their own country, black South Africans are not trying to import people to become their doctors or their engineers. That's not what the point of fighting against apartheid was. The point of fighting against colonialism is that that country that is now freed from colonialism must have its own intellectuals and its own population must solve its own problems. So you've got something like that. You've got a government that does not mind if most of its people are uneducated and they rely on grants. And then you've got the world's most unequal country in the world. I don't know why people come here, to be honest with you. It's not a nice country. Then you've got its worst unemployment rate, right? And then on the other thing, we must understand something. Capitalism is not an economic structure that we as Africans originally thought up of. It is something given to us by colonialism. So capitalism, whether you like to believe it or not, is a racist economic structure. A good example is that if you've traveled enough, if you go to Europe, in Europe, they don't mind illegal immigrants as long as those illegal immigrants are available to clean the toilets and to walk people's dogs and to do people's gardens. So when Karl Marx spoke about the Communist Manifesto, he described capitalism as something that is like against socialism or communism. But here's the problem with it, right? Is that capitalism in Europe, according to Karl Marx, had the bourgeoisie and the working class. But he didn't live in Africa. He didn't know that in Africa, it has the bourgeoisie, the working class, and black people at the bottom. So the black people are the ones who are available to do the cheap labors, right? So in the South African context, when we said that the economy is mostly in the hands of white people, we actually meant that it is white people who then exploit that structure. And what white people tend to do, just like in the United States, after the abolition of slavery, the same white people who used to come to Africa to fetch black people as slaves, saying that they are hard workers, now said that African Americans were lazy. But that's only because the local people must pay the minimum wage. So in South Africa, where you have the world's most unequal society, they have the worst unemployment rate, they have a population that the government doesn't mind if they're uneducated, they get financially excluded from universities. When you have that population being pitted against another population that says, look, there's a problem in our country. We know the minimum wage is so much. Guess what? We are here illegally, so we can't go to the labor court or to the police. They become available as cheap labor than the black people that are in South Africa.
Sorry, my sister. Sorry, my sister.
Okay,
Princess need to mute. Princess need to mute his microphone.
Okay,
Yes,
I'm muted.
Yes, thank you. So in the South African context, we have a situation where that black on black violence is it's forces of black people who are fighting to participate in the economy, right? But it's also exploited by capitalism. Now, here's the bigger question. When are we going to develop bravery or courage, guys? So what I'm saying by this is, remember, in 1791, the Haitians who were slaves were led by Toussaint Louverture. They defeated the French in Haiti. Those were slaves with no education that people are boasting about. They didn't have all the things that they boasted about. But they didn't leave Haiti and go to other countries. They actually remained and fought against the oppressors. So the question is, let's stop gaslighting each other about African brotherhood or whatever. Because in Europe today, as we're speaking now, Ukraine and Russia are beating each other up. They're not speaking about wider European brotherhood. So these brotherhood things are very disingenuous. And I'm somebody who actually loves all black people. But I'm saying that at some point, we need to ask ourselves a question. As a South African living in South Africa, whose responsibility is it to fix South Africa's problems? It's my responsibility. I can't ask Zeki to come from Zimbabwe to help me, or I can't go to Mozambique and say, guys, I refuse to leave Mozambique until Mozambique helps South Africa. No, it is our responsibility to fight for land that was owned by our own ancestors and to participate in that economy, because the economy we are living in now is a degrading, dehumanizing economy. There's nothing humanizing about working at somebody's kitchen or cleaning toilets somewhere or fighting with Lesotho nationals to pick grapes at the farm where the people that don't even have medical aid. So the question that I want to leave us with is, are we brave, yes or no? If we are not brave, let's admit it that, look, guys, we are not brave enough to fight ZANU-PF. Then maybe South Africans can help. But until you've confronted, you've looked at the person in the mirror and said, okay, let's turn the mirror to Zimbabweans now. You as Zimbabweans, ask yourself, what have you done to fight this government that is oppressing you? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. If you're done, you can just come out so that I can add others. Now I'm going to open for you, Princess. Okay, Princess is gone.
Okay,
who else
Zeki,
wants to respond to?
Yes, Zeki, can I respond?
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Hello,
Oh,
Princess.
thank you.